Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Whatcom County Public Utility District meeting to order. And I'd like to extend a particular warm welcome to our new GM, Chris Heimgartner, whose alias this morning is John Sitkin.
Hi, Chris.
There's actually part of the meeting today will be a quiz for those who can guess who is the real John Sitkin. Will you please stand
Here's
up?
a giveaway.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And is everybody okay with me doing it? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I'm just pulling up on my second device our agenda so I don't have to disappear for moments. Right. So first, of course, is as usual, is approval of the agenda. Are there any updates or changes to the agenda? So
Not for me.
I just, Commissioner, so you know, we are adding a second matter in the executive session. That's on potential litigation, and I'll discuss that in executive session.
And Steve, could you point out the changes that happened to the agenda? Because there were several changes and just for the benefit of the public.
The only thing that we did was we had Puget Sound Energy was going to make a presentation today, and we decided to put that off until Chris was going to be in attendance sometime in February. That was really the major change. I don't think we had anything else.
Okay. Great. Well, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second.
And there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Let's move on to the consent agenda, which is the meeting minutes of the November 23rd meeting, as well as the claims of December 14th.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as it reads.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Please signify your support by saying aye.
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 And that motion carries. Let's move on to public comment. Anne, could you assist?
No hands raised.
Okay, then we'll close the public comment period and let's move on to old business. Steve, are you gonna handle that?
Yeah, I can, under broadband program update, I see Andrew Entrican is with us this morning, and but he's listed, I don't think he can. I was just going to take a minute or two to introduce Andrew, but he's under attendees, so. There we go. Andrew, if you can, there you go. Hey, great.
There we go.
Good morning. Good morning. Andrew, if you want to unmute yourself, I'd just like to introduce Andrew to everybody. Andrew's joined us officially on December 1st, and he is coming on board after many years with Port of Skagit and done great things down in Skagit County and other parts of the state, helping other organizations build their program and broadband. And for the last 13 days, he's been spending most of the time down at the Port of Bellingham. And yesterday we had a great meeting with folks with the Port of Bellingham and here at the office. And so with that, I'd just like to welcome Andrew. And Andrew, if you want to say a couple words, that'd be great.
Well, sure. Thanks for the introduction, Steve. And it's really nice to see everyone here virtually. And I'm excited to get to know everyone more in person. I think we're going to do great things. And just really appreciate the opportunity. I grew up in Linden, and so to work and live in the same community is a really good thing for me and my family. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And I've got to know of Steve and Commissioner Grant here in the last week a little bit more. And so thank you for the warm welcome.
All right. I don't know, Christine, do you want to say anything or?
Yeah, I mean, just that we like Steve said, we had a meeting yesterday with the Port of Bellingham, and just really impressed, Andrew, with all the analysis you've been able to do just in a week. So it's just really want to welcome you and say how happy we are to have you. You've contributed a lot already in 1 week, so we're gonna do big things. I'm excited.
Me too.
Andrew, this is a tool. I haven't had a chance to meet you or benefit from your insights. Do you have any thoughts for? Neither Mike nor I attended the study group meeting. So, any synopsis for us about what your at least early thoughts and insights are on what's going on in our county?
I think you've built yourself a really strong team, not just by me. I'm not meaning it like that. What I mean is the folks I've been able to meet in the last week over at the port and now here at the PUD. I think you've done a good job of building up a really good, strong team. And we're going to be able to build a collaborative effort to make meaningful improvements in broadband in the underserved and rural areas of our community. And I'm really excited about that challenge and that opportunity. And so any presentations or future work will of course be shared with the rest of the commissioners.
I don't know, Steve, if this is the appropriate time to get some, put some questions out there, or is that something that we'd rather do at another time? You'd rather do it another time?
I think it might be better to wait. And maybe on the 21st, we can take a little bit more time and it would be helpful, I think, if all the commissioners would send to Andrew, a list of questions very specific that you'd like to have him start looking at.
Yeah, so I'll leave my primary question presented right now, and then give more thoughts later. So the effort for undertaking broadband during my tenure, which is about 3 years now, has taken an evolution. Around the time that I became a commissioner, the Port and the PUD had co-funded a study for the purpose of assessing what can be done to support the public in Whatcom County. And that study produced a report which presented that the crucial thing to make progress was to create an open access backbone for the county. Andrew, are you aware of that original study?
Yeah, yes, I am.
So what we're doing today is, for a couple of reasons, very different than what the original study asked for. I'll just mention briefly those reasons. Those reasons are the nature of federal funding is different than what we would have ideally hoped for. It's very much focused on creating retail connections. Now, luckily at the state level, we've been allowed now as of this last legislative session to be able to provide retail service as a PUD. But nonetheless, it still leaves the question begging about what to do about the backbone. And so the focus in our community is largely identifying almost unserved. I guess I don't want to cause a problem by introducing a new term. I guess I'll just say underserved. We have these terms, right? Unserved, underserved, and served. So I won't create another term. So the underserved are certainly important and are the focus of a few different projects around about half a dozen now different projects around the county to provide small local loops based on telecom backbone, privately owned backbone, which by the way, largely was publicly funded at some point in the last couple of decades. So the question is how to either completely decide that the original feasibility study and purpose was mistaken, which is okay, or to identify what is the way to create a public open access backbone. I currently don't believe, by the way, that the original feasibility study was mistaken, but I'm open to learning. And I believe that we're taking pragmatic steps to serve the public, recognizing the fact that the original text was far more daunting than we had realized originally. So that's really the question, is about what about the open access backbone? Are we going, what are your thoughts about delivering that for the community? And that's my central question. So.
Yep, we should have a workshop and go through some of the methodologies that we're starting to develop. What I can tell you is, in other parts of the state and in Skagit, the most rural areas, these are folks who are not receiving 100 down, 20 up speeds. In some cases, they're even receiving less than 25.3. We were able to build successful infrastructure, and get funding for fiber to the premise. And so it's fiber to the premise, it's dedicated dark fiber all the way back to the colo, and all those address units within the Polygon project area will get gigabit services for less than $100 a month. And that's in the most rural parts of the community. And that's only maintaining and owning the infrastructure is what the public entity does. And then they lease it out on a wholesale basis to any internet service provider who wants to lease it. So we don't deal with the equipment. We don't deal with, customers and billing. It's just maintaining and building dark fiber infrastructure.
Yeah, the big pipes.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a fair analogy. That's what comes up in my head, like us maintaining the big pipes.
Yep, like a freeway. We just build the freeway, and it doesn't matter to us who operates over that on that freeway. And that's one model. It happens to be successful in Skagit and in other areas of the state, but always a good idea to pursue and evaluate other models against that model. Absolutely.
Well, great. Thank you for that. Any other comments, questions?
Well, I think we're spot on bringing Andrew on. We're very fortunate to have him here, and really looking forward to seeing some color put in his new office, because it's pretty bland right now.
Working on it.
Yeah, we need it. Andrew, you've got no time to get a tree up there and some lights and.
I know. I spend all my time thinking about broadband. I overlook the fact I need to hang a poster up every now and then. So I'll work on it.
Steve, you're one to talk. I'm the only one wearing anything holiday-ish on this Zoom call. All right. The next item on our agenda is new business. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks and welcome, by the way. Of course, from all of us, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here. See you next time.
And thank you for the Port of Skagit as well for letting that happen. So
Don't tell them I'm here.
they don't know. Okay.
Just kidding.
Are you still on vacation?
This is an open secret. The Open Public Meeting Secrecy Act. All right. So let's move on to new business. So
And we lost Commissioner Deshmani. I think the next item on the agenda is the public hearing for the PUD Commission Districts redistricting process.
Yes.
And here he comes back.
I have no idea what happened.
Magic. It's that holiday spirit. Just
I disappeared and I
disappear and
came
come back.
Yeah, I disappeared and I came back.
Yeah, so I was just kind of teeing this up, Commissioner. This is the set for the public hearing on the commission districts, part of the redistricting process that we introduced last meeting. As I mentioned, Peter Rafato, my office, the fellow principal, is coordinating that for you. So I'm going to turn the discussion over to Peter and he can set this up for you and proceed. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to present to you this morning. I think what I'd like to do is on this redistricting process, just give a little bit of background, touch on the substantive requirements, talk about the process that we've had to date, and then potentially, depending on how you want to handle this as a public hearing, maybe just outline the draft plan that was published. So starting with the background, and you've had a couple of meetings on this where this has been raised as already as an issue. Based on the 2020 census, the state law requires various special purpose districts to look at their district boundaries and make sure that if any adjustments need to be made, those adjustments are made to ensure certain substantive requirements are met. So as we talked about before, those substantive requirements require that the population in each internal commissioner district be as nearly equal as possible to each other. They have to be compact as possible. You have to maintain a geographically contiguous area within those districts. You have to make sure that as part of the redistricting process, there's no purpose or intent with respect to favoring any racial group or political party. And finally, to the extent possible, you want to maintain your communities of interest. And so given those substantive requirements, the Port of Bellingham, in coordination with the PUD, worked on a draft redistricting plan. And that was presented to the PUD back on November 23rd. The commission approved that as a draft plan to be published. That publishing occurred and it's been on the PUD website. This is all consistent with the process requirements in state law. And in addition to that, as you know, the Port of Bellingham and the PUD have had basically the same district boundaries, which has had the added benefit of lessening any potential confusion within the public, and you can maintain that consistency. And so in addition to the PUD approving a draft plan on the 23rd, the Port of Bellingham has actually approved for publishing the same district boundaries that occurred on December 7th, I believe. So that's where we are today, and you've had the plan before you, the draft plan. The draft plan has been published per state law, and the purpose of today's meeting is to hold that public hearing as required by the statute, and to take any public comment so that you can consider those comments. Would it be helpful for me to go to screen share potentially and show you potentially for the public to go through kind of just basically what those adjustments are to make those populations equal? Okay. Okay, I'm screen sharing now. Can you see the draft plan before you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so as presented and is published and is approved as a draft plan, you have what was before a required adjustment before the change in the boundaries. And with the assistance of the Port of Bellingham and PUD Commission staff looking at it, they were able to identify a movement of precincts that lessened the deviation from the target to 113, as you see here. And the way that's accomplished is by moving precinct 136 from District 3 to internal District 1, and moving precinct number 234 from District 2 to District 1. And then moving on down, I'd just like to point out where those districts are. There's precinct 136 and precinct 234. And so that pretty much concludes it. We're here today to hear any public comment on that draft plan. There would be no action taken at today's meeting. And that would be anticipated for the December 21st meeting. So are there any questions at this point or any further information that you would like?
Peter, thank you for that clear presentation. And we have discussed this at a previous commission meeting, but we do want to hear from the public. So if it's okay with you, let's go to see if there's public comment. Open the public hearing and see if there's comment. Should we proceed? So let's open the public hearing for the PUD Commission District redistricting process. And let me see, and if you could also assist, see if there's any public comment. I see nothing.
No hands raised, and I don't believe we received anything in the office either.
No,
No email comments.
no.
Okay, then let's close the public hearing. And so we actually have it listed as a second agenda item. So let's move on to item 6B. And the first resolution is to.
Commissioner, just for clarity, close the public hearing, and this is matters going to come back for final action on the 21st. So I think just a informal direction to finalize these maps or not for your action, final action on the 21st would be beneficial. So we can meet that time frame.
Yeah, so the procedures that the public hearing has to be at a different meeting than where the districts get approved.
Correct. So I guess what the question for the commissioners is this acceptable? Are these, this is the recommendation that's come forward. Would you like to have the final resolution prepared on this basis for your adoption on the 21st, or are there changes to the map you would like to see?
I've got no changes.
Neither do I.
I have no changes.
Okay, I think that's sufficient for us so we can go forward and prepare the final action for you. Thank you for letting me intervene, Commissioner.
No, yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem. So let's move on to item 6B, which is the 2022 budget and rates resolutions.
This will be, Annette will make that final presentation today, and we're asking after Annette makes her comments that you consider three different resolutions, 805, 806, and 807, to adopt the budget and then set new rates for the different utilities for 2022.
Good morning. So typically what we do is we've done just a little bit of background. We did our initial presentation in October. We met with the customers. We collected all the feedback, and then we did our final presentation. And then we did receive some comments after that. So there has been a little bit of an adjustment, and the budget that's up on the website does reflect that. It did not affect the rates for this year, which is what is presented in these three resolutions. It does affect going forward in the forecasting, and it was taking out the cost for a rebuild in the office. So we will be looking at that at the subsequent budgets. But before you today are the three different resolutions to adopt for the budget, and then the different rates for the water and the electric. Is there any
Thank you.
questions on that?
So should we go ahead and proceed with motions? Or is there any further presentation you intend to make, Annette?
No further presentation.
Okay. Commissioners, what say you? I think, are we ready to go ahead and make the approval of the resolutions? Are there further questions or comments?
O'Toole,
Commissioner Murphy?
do you know if we have to do these resolutions separately, 805 through 807, or can you know if we can do them as one motion?
We could certainly do it as a motion, but yeah,
If you have no changes, you can do them as one technical motion for the purpose of the minutes, but they are separate resolutions.
If the commissioners have no objection to what the resolutions are, I'll make a motion to accept resolution 805, 806, 807 in one motion.
And I'll second resolution 805, 806, and 807.
there's a motion in seconds. But I think the second is actually Commissioner Grant to the motion, not the resolutions.
okay.
We only need 1 second actually. Because a motion indicates approval of all three resolutions. So there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Thanks for all the hard work. And I know that I do appreciate your efforts to keep us informed through the entire process, including some urgent deliveries, which you know, there were no fires in any of that, but it was very good to be able to get quick updates as they were happening. So thanks for your attention to doing that during the process.
Thank you.
Steve, can we move on to the general manager's report?
Commissioner, just a couple of things, and I was going to present some pictures this morning of the damage that would, excuse me, that has occurred at both of the Plant 2 intake and also at the old BP intake down by the bridge in Ferndale. And I'm still working on taking the pictures and sharing them with you that Dwayne has provided, but we may have to wait on those until your next meeting, but just to indicate that we did declare 2 different emergencies, one at both the BP, the old BP intake in Ferndale, and then the Plant 2 diversion here at the office. I can tell you that the work at the Plant 2 diversion is occurring as we speak, and that's mostly going to be repairing a lot of areas of erosion around the building, and then also reinforcing some of the walkway, the structure of the walkway, and then replacing some of the supports that support the walkway here at the Plant 2 diversion. The plant, the old BP site next to the bridge in Ferndale was actually damaged around the old structure much more drastically than was here at Plant 2. And so we're finishing up getting a final price quote to complete that work. And in the future, at the BP diversion, we need to make some decisions as to how much we're going to try to retain there in terms of the structure and the approaching cement work, and whether or not we have to retain the actual structure to retain that as a potential location for diversion. And because we have added that the old BP site as a location for taking water out of the river, and it's actually been placed back on our water right for that original 5 cubic feet per second water right that was assigned to that. So we'll keep you informed on that. And next week, we'll have some pictures that we can share with you. Again, the damage was not to the structure itself, but all the surrounding areas of both the structures, Plant 2 and BP, the old BP site. So never interrupted our service here at Plant 2. It never impacted the building itself in terms of the structure nor anything inside, but we did have to declare emergency so that we could get the contractors in and start working. So the only other thing is we're still waiting on our water system plan update. We're trying to get that completed. We'd hope to get it done by the end of the year. It doesn't appear that we may get it. We may not be able to get that completed by the end of the year, but very, very shortly thereafter. We had some comments come up from Department of Ecology on their review of the system plan. And we're meeting with legal counsel later this week to discuss those comments and their requested changes. So I think that's all I had.
Questions, comments from the commission?
I have none. I've kind of seen the BP and I've looked already at Plant 2 and 1 when I could even get close to it after the water receded. But yeah, it was really shocking. So thanks, Steve, for the update. Looking forward to the pictures, by the way.
Yeah.
So I have two items. One is, thank you for identifying and separating the policy issue that impacts the old BP diversion, right? Because this there is an implication to how we look at our water system, not drinking water, commercial industrial water system, and the infrastructure that's part of that. And perhaps we can plan to have a discussion with input from, if we need it, from our water rights attorneys on that
Yes.
subject.
Yeah, we will. We will.
Okay, great. And then this second item, is there any associated with the emergency? Obviously, we don't know what the weather is going to deliver. So that's probably a big part of the need to declare an emergency, because currently things are functioning, but if we don't get on it, there's potential cumulative effects that could be problematic. And not to try to imagine the negative, but actually, I want you to imagine the negative. It's kind of my job. So I want your thoughts about what subsequent severe weather events that we might see this winter, and that what concerns staff the most about cumulative environmental impacts.
I think the main thing we always deal with every year, seems like every year, is a fragile ice issue, and you know, that's so iffy, if that's the best way to put it. But it's you know, we could have 2 weeks of rain, and that's not, you know, the fragile ice is not a problem. But we could have, you know, in the next week now, we're looking at some snow conditions. But not, the temperatures are not forecasted to be that low that we could have a problem with the fragile ice. So that's one thing. The other is that, you know, another flood like we've experienced, you know, a couple of weeks ago is probably, I mean, I say that with best intentions and hope that we won't experience that again this season. But longer term, when we look at the Plant 2 diversion here, we need to look at some way of reinforcing the area around that structure, because what happened this last time was that the water came up so high and was flowing from land over past the diversion back into the river, and that's what caused the damage there. We've never had that before, and so looking at a way to basically dike, around the structure to keep that from happening. There was no damage on the rock in the river, on the face of the embankment. So that's one thing that we're going to need to look at, take a serious look at. And then on the other, on plant 2 or the old BP site, there we need to make some decisions on whether or not we need to maintain that structure. I would imagine, without looking at it at all, we can imagine that it's going to, if we decide to remove the structure and just retain what's necessary for Department of Ecology to accept that as a diversion, potential point of diversion, it's going to be a very costly removal process, because there's thousands of tons of concrete in that structure. So I think those are our two main concerns. Now, in my other in terms of potential damage, I think that really covers it. And we didn't have any known problem down at the plant 1 diversion site itself. And probably one of the reasons is that the embankment there, the levee was high enough that we had water, behind it, but not then causing a diversion, or not causing any erosion going back into the river. So, and of course, Dwayne has been working for almost 2 years now, I think, with Whatcom County Flood Management and the Corps of Engineers and City of Ferndale on redesigning, if you would, that levee on both sides of the diversion at Plant 1. So, and that's a long-winded answer to the question, Commissioner. That those are the things that I think we need to be concerned about. So
That was very helpful. Thank you. And it seems to be that in more than one case with Public Works, there is a issue of not so much of the tide coming in. And of course, this isn't a tidal issue, just for analogy's sake. It's the tide going out. That's the bigger risk to Public Works facilities. And that's many public agencies are talking about that.
Well, and in terms of Plant 2, we've got an interesting river system here, because downstream from Plant 2, about a mile and a half, is a floodgate that allows water to go back into the river. So, and if you go upstream from Plant 2, about 3/4 of a mile, there's also a path for the water, once the river comes up high enough, for the water to flow out of the river system around Plant 2, and then back through the fields and then back down into the river. Well, in the case of the flood that we experienced, we were seeing, about a 3-mile wide river flow here at that point, at the peak. And so none of that was happening. There was no place for the water to go. And it was up until yesterday that the road down to Plant 2 here, diversion, was actually accessible to our contractor to get in, first of all, to repair the road, so that, because there was damage to the road itself, but it was that was the first time that the contractor could even get in. So it's an interesting dynamic here with Plant 2.
Do we have boats to get out to Plant to the diversion?
Pardon?
How do our staff get out to, when the road is covered? Do they take a boat out to the facility?
We have a boat, but we didn't use it because with our camera system and our SCADA system, we were able to monitor the diversion, and everything was not being affected. So
we have it if we need it.
yes.
That's good. Any further comments or questions, Commission? Well, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
And thanks, to the whole staff for handling another crisis. And look forward to hearing more about it and supporting the ongoing operations as in an emergency, as appropriate, and then also pulling out the appropriate policy considerations as they come up. So. Okay, so moving on from the general manager's report to commissioner reports. Commissioner Grant, Commissioner Murphy, who would like to go first?
I have no, I'm not asking for any per diem, so however, I've been involved with on the flood issues and people trying to get back into their homes and things like that and clean things up. But otherwise, I have not. I attended one meeting, but no, I have no reports, sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Murphy. Commissioner Grant?
I went to both days of the WAPUDA annual conference, and I really got a lot out of it. I think it was the best WAPUDA event that I've been to. It did, we heard from, there was a guest speaker that was focused on adaptive leadership and kind of the difference between solving technical problems versus adaptive challenges. And they moved us into breakout rooms. And so it was a really great opportunity to have a smaller conversation with other PUD commissioners and staff about kind of what their big challenges are that they're facing. So really got a lot out of those breakout room, smaller conversations, and several other PUDs are struggling with what their role on broadband is exactly. Was interested to learn about the hydrogen project that Douglas County is doing. They're doing a 5 megawatt electrolyzer. But just kind of some of the themes of this kind of section of the conference was about how to build an adaptive culture and just how important really being clear about what your PUD's purpose is as a way to get you through some of these challenging, getting through some of these adaptive challenges. So enjoyed that part of the presentation or the day, and then also got a lot out of Therese Hampton's presentation. She's the executive director for the Pacific Generating Pool, and she's retiring soon. So she gave a presentation kind of without her executive director hat on for where she thought things were going in the region on energy. And as usual, I asked questions about the role of demand response, and I think had a kind of decent interaction with Nicholas Garcia about the need to really keep digging into that and educating the co-op community on what we could do on demand response. And I would say that Therese echoed my viewpoint, which is that demand response is a really underexplored resource in the Northwest that we would really benefit from exploring more. So I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record at WAPUDA events related to energy on demand response, but I think that it will hopefully help us have a more, have a conversation as an association about where we might be able to go. And then, another thing she talked about was just how public power needs to have a more consistent voice on our must-haves in terms of where we're going with energy markets and regulation, and really kind of speak with more of a single voice. So those are kind of the highlights, but would really, I'm hoping to finally get to go to a WAPUDA event in person at some point. It's hard to, it's still pretty hard to connect with other commissioners just online. And I think I would really benefit from getting to start forming some relationships with more commissioners in person. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. And like I said at the beginning, we had a sort of informal broadband steering committee meeting yesterday. I can't say how wonderful it is to finally have a staff person supporting our broadband efforts after a full year of not having staff. That's been pretty challenging. I think I didn't realize how challenging it was until we actually had a staff person supporting us. So again, just want to say how grateful I am that we have Andrew on board. And then we have a full broadband steering committee meeting tomorrow.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. I would like to first talk about something you raised, and that is regarding energy and the feeling that perhaps you might be a broken record. I think it's very beneficial for you to continue to repeat that point that WPUDA, like many organizations, has inertia, and that inertia, changing the direction of that, or shifting that, is as a time-consuming, patient effort. And so the importance on demand response is one that has received maybe a little bit of attention before you're a commissioner, but I think it's being well received, at least as I perceive it. When I'm also sitting in on those sessions, I'm paying attention to how people are responding to it, and I think it's being very well received. So please keep it up, if I can suggest that. I think it's having a beneficial impact on the energy community within WPUDA. My personal area that I'm focusing on in the energy community is a focus on reliability rather than resource availability. And the reason is because reliability allows us to think about transmission, whereas resource availability doesn't really address the transmission issue. And what the study by the Northwest Power Pool, what it demonstrated was that our loss of load probability events, which is like a reliability statement, are related to transmission issues more than they are to resource availability issues. So the WPUDA community has really, out of a desire to protect hydro, rallied around resource availability as a centerpiece, but I think it would be beneficial for our community to think more about reliability, because that includes things like adaptive demand. It includes things like transmission. So anyway, I wanted to address that. I also attended, but I think Commissioner Grant provided already a summary of the energy presentation at the conference. And I'm also very much looking forward to our next meeting, which will be hybrid, which will allow both in-person and Zoom attendance. And I think it'll bring up the game for everybody at our next WPUDA meeting. I've got two other comments, and regarding water, I think with the floods, I was personally affected. I have hot water again. And it's an electric water heater, Christine, but the problem is that I don't have no one to dispatch it for me. As we move forward, I look forward to talking to Chris about those ideas. But anyway, regarding water, the big message that I think that the floods are sending us all, those of us with resources, and that includes organizations like WPUDA, and it includes many of us individually, to make our personal infrastructure and our community infrastructure more resilient. And that there needs to be an additional emphasis placed on resilience of our infrastructure, of our facilities, than has previously been placed. And that probably applies to the PUD, and it certainly applies to other local governments, although I'm not going to pick on anybody. But we have some very climate vulnerable facilities on waterfronts and adjacent to rivers that our local cities and local governments have. And you need to think about that quite seriously. I'm very open to working with folks in the community to codify that goal for resiliency. And perhaps even as something that we should consider on a government-wide basis, an initiative on resiliency, whether that's resiliency of our facilities, our infrastructure, or the ecosystem's resilience, which is equally important, because of course that's what sustains us all. So to me, and of course the actions that we're going to take in the near term at the PUD, and hopefully as individuals too, will reflect the fact that we're recognizing that we're living in times where the climate is more volatile. There's no question we have an impact on the climate, and that impact on the climate is coming back to roost. We have to continue to reduce our impact. In addition to reducing our impact, we also must place a significant effort on how to make our buildings, infrastructure, and actually even our personal lives more resilient. So I attended several water meetings last week. The most important thing I'd like to share out of that was at the watershed management team, which I often attend as part of my prep for the watershed management board meeting, which is next week. Next week, the staff will be presenting at the watershed management team about technical priorities regarding protection of natural resources, the salmon. In this last meeting at the watershed management team, they spoke about a specific fish kill event that happened this summer because of basically high temperatures in the river. It was of Chinook salmon, which of course we know are particularly precious to our local ecosystem and our local communities. And it was of course a sad story, but a very positive presentation, because that's what local government efforts are about. You identify a problem, you identify ways to address it, you propose those solutions, and then you get support behind it. And I'm glad to say that it appears that all of that is in place to certainly prevent this kind of an extreme event that occurred this last summer, but also have a team in place to address those kinds of concerns on the spot as they come up. And Whatcom PUD is a leader in this regard as far as PUDs around the state, because I believe that the drought plan that this commission approved is part of the way that we add policy measures in place. We have policy measures in place that would allow us to respond quickly to emergencies that happen in their tributaries and their rivers as well. Steve, would you like to add anything to that?
I just think that thank you, Atul, for bringing all that up in terms of especially last week's meeting on with the management team, watershed management team. I think that as we go forward, I don't know who the quote goes back to, but never ignore a crisis to seek out opportunities for funding and opportunities for solution. And I think that what you're going to see, because of what's happened in the county with the flood, there's going to be significant opportunities to talk about what can we do and how can we do this work together to keep the damage that happened with our recent flood to happen from happening again. The other side of that is that I think it's going to create opportunities even at the federal level to bring money into the county to look at how we address water supply, not just for the out of stream uses, but also for salmon recovery and so forth. And how we can do that all together is going to make a difference. And I think that the crisis that was created with the recent flood, and with your example of last year's or this last summer's fish kill, it creates this. All of a sudden, people decide that they need to work together more on a holistic fashion to deal with water, and also take advantage of, if we're going to do something with our dikes and levees, then maybe we should be looking more at storage. Maybe we can look at ways to improve stream flow during those low times. Anyway, I think it has had a perverse effect on pushing people to work together more to solve the problem. So,
Steve, will I be asked to vote this coming Watershed Management Board meeting? Is there anything the commission needs me to check in with the commission on?
I don't think so.
Regarding technical priorities.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, I just would like to let the commissioners know that I intend to speak supportively about the technical priorities of the staff team and the ongoing effort for ecosystem function and resiliency.
It's an interesting time for folks like myself and Rebecca and yourself, Atul, to be engaged at this local level, as well as taking what we're seeing at the local level and move it to action that we may be working on or are working on for additional funding coming from the state, and rules and regulations that may be asked to change, especially with Department of Ecology on certain ways to help us solve some of these problems. So interesting times.
And Steve and I and Rebecca have a not yet formalized but requested meeting with the county executive. We understand that the county executive is a little extra busy right now. And the purpose of that is to discuss technical priorities.
Yeah.
So, the other item I wanted to address was broadband. I was in the unfortunate position this last week at the broadband advisory group of having to stick my neck out. I don't look for opportunities to do that, but I had to. And that was regarding a comment made, and I think, motivation is a little bit important to understand here, is that the Public Works Director, Eric Johnson, is getting over his own, and not actually even halfway through fighting his own fires as it relates to the water treatment plant. There was quite a crisis at the water treatment plant a few weeks ago, where there was not direct release of sludge, but certainly untreated water going into the bay, which is a problem. And many other issues like Iowa Street. So I can imagine any public works director biting off more is not the first thing on their agenda. Let's just recognize that. And to some extent, the work of the BAG, the City of Bellingham's advisory group, is going to put more on the plate of public works. There's no question about that. The point of disagreement I had with the Director of Public Works had to do with whether the purpose of the committee is to identify how to better serve the public as it relates to broadband and connectivity, or whether there is a need to provide additional services by the city. And being intimately involved with the early stages of actually being one of the key people that lobbied the city council members to make it a priority, to do something about broadband, knowing what their constituents are saying and knowing what the resolution says. The City of Bellingham's Broadband Advisory Group was created based on their own language to identify actual mechanisms to help the people of Bellingham, recognizing that there is a second aspect of the digital divide. Certainly, historically, when people talk about the digital divide, their focus has been geographic. But in the city of Bellingham, it's not a geographic problem because many people are near good connectivity. It just, many people don't have good connectivity at a good price. So for people like that, that's why the city's group was created, because they're not trying to solve a geographic problem. They're trying to solve an economic access problem. So my contention is that the purpose of the bag is to provide actual solutions for how to better serve the city of Bellingham. And there are some who believe, and there's a difference of opinion, there's some in the bag group who believe that maybe we're going to come back at the end of these bag meetings and say, well, it's being handled. Don't worry, people who say you're not being served, don't worry, you actually are being served. And obviously that is not something that that I can agree with. Respectfully disagreeing, realizing that there's other perspectives out there, but I wanted to share that important difference that has emerged. And that's my report. So the next item on our agenda is public comment.
I don't see any hands raised.
Great, well, we'll close the public comment period. And I believe next, John, we have on our agenda is executive session. Did you predict the timing correctly, John?
Yeah, well, I'm going to predict that we're going to be overall over an hour on the two matters, possibly approaching an hour and a half, but I'll come and I'll advise Ann in an hour with a new estimate. No action is anticipated today coming out of these meetings. We'll go over the qualifications and performance of a public employee for a position first, then we'll go into, when that's complete, we'll go to discuss potential litigation. The first matter, I'll meet with the commission, I think just myself and the commission initially, and then invite Steve back in, and Chris will be on hold. We might bring Chris in at some point to discuss the role of the person as warranted. So Steve and Chris, I'll separately call or text you and tell you when to come in on that line that you have on the executive session Zoom link. I just feel the need to set the stage and kind of recap discussions to date with the commission, and then move forward with the discussion with Steve, and then as appropriate, bring Chris in at some point. So just hold tight. I'll text or call you all. And Steve, I expect the next 10-15 minutes. So if you need to get a slow cup of coffee, that's fine. So with that tee up, Commissioner, I think we're ready.
Great. Good morning, everyone. It's about 11:30. We just came out of executive session. There were two items discussed as listed in the agenda. There's no further action from either of those discussions. We appreciate everyone's attendance. And I will go ahead and call this December 14th, Whatcom County PUD. I should make one point. Our next meeting is on the 21st for those of you who wouldn't otherwise know that. It's on the 21st, so we'll see you next week, hopefully. But I'll call this December 14th meeting for the Whatcom County PUD to a close. Thank you all.
Thank you.